Hi, everyone. I'm John, your host for today on Route to Scale, a short podcast featuring the founders and operators building the future of e commerce, fulfillment, mobility, and modern delivery. In this segment, we're going to be focusing on Africa, and today I'm very honored to have Collin, founder and CEO of Yongeza Capital. Yongeza Capital is a Ugandan battery swapping infrastructure company for electric two wheeler OEMs and fleet operators. Rather than asking every EV company to build its own network, Yongeza Capital identifies and leases sites, builds and staff swap stations, manages energy and uptime, and operates the physical infrastructure for its partners. Yongeza Capital's mission is the large scale electrification of mobility in Uganda first, and then the rest of Africa after. Thank you so much, Colin, for this time. We're so excited for this call.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much for getting me on the podcast.
No worries. So, Colin, we have to ask you, you're incredibly experienced. Your resume speaks for itself. You have more than 25 years working across supply chains, telecom infrastructure, and energy before Young is a Capital. So tell us your story. What led you to start Young is a Capital, and what was the opportunity that you saw that was worth building?
Thanks, John. Now, obviously, as you've heard, I'm the CEO and the founder of Yongeza Capital. Now, Yongeza Capital is into the EV infrastructure space, EV meaning electric vehicles. What led me here, to answer your question, John, is that it's a very nascent industry, the EV industry. It's in Africa, unlike what we see in China, where it's developed in a very big way. Africa is still very nascent, and we think that this is an industry that is going to grow in years to come. And because of my experience in developing networks, starting with the telecom infrastructure, I thought this was just going to be the best industry to fit in and grow and develop a network for swapping and infrastructure to enable the EVs. Now, the reason why it's an agnostic type strategy that we have is that we want to encourage every EV to come into the market to ensure that they have the convenience to charge.
Wow, wonderful. Now, Yongeza Capital is employing a very specific bet and very different strategy, right? EV manufacturers are going to deploy the vehicles while someone else specializes in the physical swap infrastructures. Why do you think that separating those two layers creates a better model for Africa compared to, let's just say, Tesla's approach, where they own not just the vehicles but also the charging infrastructure itself?
So you cannot be you cannot make your cake and eat it all. You need to be very specific on on a specific industry, and being specific on an industry means that you have the niche, you have the expertise and experience in that industry, as opposed to getting into the whole entire ecosystem. The EV industry is so big. There's quite a lot that you can do there, but the parts have to be put together to ensure that you have a whole integrated and working ecosystem. And for us, infrastructure and EV charging is one of those small pieces that will make up the bigger map. So when you look at EVs, you have the vehicle itself, manufacturing and assembly and putting it together and making it work. That's one. You have the battery, which is the solid heart of the business, which is two. You have the infrastructure, and then you also have the financing, because not so many people have the money to buy these vehicles. So for us, playing in the infrastructure space is the most important thing for us to enable that. We enable the EV industry get adoption into Uganda first and then Africa next. So running the EV infrastructure gives us a lot of experience. You can imagine a network and you are running a station that is 700 or 1,000 kilometers away from where you are seated, and making sure that you have a 99.9% uptime. It's not a simple thing. So you need the skill, the expertise to run this infrastructure to ensure that you are enabling the EV adoption.
Wow, wonderful. you know, I was reading through some of your posts and things that you've talked about just on what I could research about yourself on the internet, and you explicitly compare Yongeza Capital with the independent tower company model within the telecom space, right? What did you learn from the telecom industry about shared infrastructure that made you also, I guess, think about electric mobility in Africa in the same way?
So there was a lot of wastage of capital at the beginning in the telecom space, where you had different players build their own different infrastructure in the same area. So let's take an example of a hill. Kampala, for example, in Uganda is built on 7 hills. You'd find a hill with 4 or 5 towers. That means you're wasting capital on building that infrastructure. You're wasting capital on having the same security guard or seven security guards for different towers. You're having capital wasted for 7 generators and fuel to generate those to get the generators working. You're having wastage on the leases because you have to pay leases for the 7 different towers. Now that's a lot of wastage of capital in the industry. What we are saying for EVs is you then do not need to create 7 different charging infrastructure. You need to create one charging infrastructure serving 7 partners. That way you're optimizing capital. Yeah. Secondly, you're creating the convenience. So everybody can come into the swap station and ensure you get the same service, standardized service, as opposed to having different stations for different players. And thirdly, you can it's easy for players to enter into the market. Just imagine you're a telecom active player and you don't have any infrastructure, but you want to come into the market, you want to start your market. How do you start? The first thing you're going to do is to develop the infrastructure, which is capital intensive, which needs a lot of money. But if you already find existing capital or existing infrastructure and where you want to plug and play, it's easy then for you to enter into the market and do business. So that's what we're actually enabling in the EV space. You don't need so many littered infrastructure, but you need one player doing it for all, so that if there is a player out of Singapore or a player out of China or a player out of India, it's easy for you to come and plug and play.
Wow, wonderful. So it gives you that flexibility, right? And also capital efficiency.
Yes,
That's really awesome.
that's right.
Um, when your current network now, based on my research, has about 50 active swap stations, right? Uh, that's already wonderful, and obviously you have ambitions to scale to even more, right? I'm just curious, when Yongeza Capital thinks about evaluating different sites, I assume based on things like rider density, grid reliability, lease terms, all of those stuff, what would you say is the most important factors in terms of unit economics that makes a station succeed or struggle financially?
Obviously, so many factors, John,
Of
but the
course.
most important I've mentioned for you 3 is the rider density. If you do not have the riders to utilize the station, then definitely it doesn't make economics sustainable. The second thing is the grid reliability. You have to have super grid. Fortunately, in Uganda, we specifically we have the hydroelectricity, which is easily produced and easily distributed. So it's easy for you to have your electricity. Normally, it is 3 phase to a station, easily connected to the station and you back. We've seen over a period of time now that these lines, these grid lines are actually being overused or underutilized, and the capacity is small, and we're now actually putting independent transformers for different stations to ensure that we enhance this capacity. But you have to have that network close to you, the grid network close to you, to ensure that the station is utilized efficiently. Obviously, there are many other factors. I could say leases. The cost of lease is also another factor that plays within the efficiency and reliability of the station. Yeah, so I just mentioned 3 of them, but there could be small other factors that do. And lastly, I also need to say that because ours is innovation and everything is internet-based, internet communication, you also need a reliable link on internet connectivity, which the government of Uganda, fortunately, is providing through the players like MTN, Airtel, and the likes.
Wow, wow, wonderful, wonderful. Totally see that. Um, now,
Yeah.
now, based on obviously, you know, how you mentioned rider density is so important for the unit economics of your stations, right? Just to help our audience understand a little bit from a routing perspective, right? How far does usually, let's just assume, a commercial rider realistically deviate from their normal trips to actually go and swap a battery, right? At what point does the additional, distance start to hurt the economics of going electric?
I think anything above 1 kilometer hurts the economics of the rider.
Wow.
For you to get off or veer off your route to go and look for a battery to charge, anything more than 1 kilometer is really hurting to the rider. So the current technology of battery we have ranges between 80 kilometers to 100 kilometers. But as you know, technology is changing really fast. Yeah, and we are going to see batteries that are giving you maybe 150 to 200 kilometers for a two-wheeler. Yeah, in China, for example, right now we have vehicles that are giving you over 1,000 kilometers of charge, which is very important. So I can tell you that we're going to move from the small charge stations that are placed to the bigger stations that it is serving a wider kilometer range, and then rider density there and range anxiety seems to then ease as opposed to what is currently happening, and that will only be done by improvement in technology.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. One of the things that I just wanted to, really congratulate you on, actually quite a few, is because we have experience working in these sort of places as well. As you report, roughly an average uptime of 95%, right? That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what do you do differently that allows you to keep such an amazing uptime and reduce the downtime within these networks?
Thanks, John. It's all experience from the telecom industry. I can tell you, we borrow, we copy, we paste. And
that works. Oh, if it works, it works.
Similar to telecoms, you need to have that uptime. Just imagine you pick up you're in an emergency situation and you pick up your phone and you cannot connect to a policeman or to an emergency service. So similarly, in EVs, in transportation and logistics, you don't want to go to a station and you don't have a battery. Then you cannot move if you don't have a battery. So what we're trying to do is to make sure that we copy and paste the same analogy where we're going to have 100% uptime of the stations. And a Tesla, for example, it would be very difficult to monitor. There's so many parameters in infrastructure that build that 95% uptime. I'll give you an example. Employees, do the employees actually come on time? Do they report on time? They do shifts, So if the employee has closed the station, then and the rider comes and they don't find the station open, you're losing. First of all, you're losing revenue. Secondly, you're losing the zeal of that rider to keep on with EVs, which is very different from what you would have right now on a fuel bike, where petrol stations, fuel stations are littered all over. So we are trying to create that uptime. Secondly, you have alternative sources of energy. So if the grid goes off, what happens? You stop working. So we're trying as an infrastructure business to put alternative sources of energy. So do we put solar to make sure there's a 99.9% uptime? Then we also have a network operating center that runs 24/7, where all the stations are actually monitored remotely. We know which batteries are charging, how many batteries are charging, what is the state of charge of the battery, what is the cabinet state, the charging cabinet state. If it's off, that means that you're not charging batteries, and then the riders are not getting the service. So you need to be able to monitor this real time to ensure that you have batteries for the riders 24/7. So all this is not skill that a different player who's focusing on the EV would do. It would only be a small other or another player who can actually focus on this to make sure that the uptime is 99.9%.
Wow, awesome, awesome. Well, another big congratulations, I guess, as I was researching about your company, is you recently just partnered with um Oryx Energies. I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Yes,
Um,
yes, RX energies.
Oryx Energies to also put your swapping infrastructure at certain existing service stations that they operate in, right? I'm curious about that because we just discussed the importance of location and rider density, right? Or what you're seeing in the market is that today's petrol stations are also naturally poised to be some of the best locations for tomorrow's electric mobility infrastructure, or does actually electric fleet create a completely different geographies based on energy demand? I'm just very curious to understand your thought process behind that.
So it's important for us to partner with Oryx,
Mm,
and I think it was also very important for us to partner with other fuel stations and a
mm,
portfolio of another fuel stations. For example, Shell or Total or Ruby, for example, because these already have existing networks of fuel stations. So it would then be easy for you to come and swap your battery at that fuel station if you put a charging station at that fuel station. So that's why we've partnered with Oryx. Oryx just gives us that opportunity to have that wider portfolio across the country to ensure that we put these charging stations at their stations. So that's why we've partnered. But with EVs, it doesn't mean that you can only utilize fuel stations, for example. Yeah, you can actually put this in dense areas, for example. Residential areas where these two-wheeler riders stay, and that would be easy. I'm sure, John, you always fuel your car early in the morning and then late in the evening, so that it's easy for you to just wake up, get into your car, and get to office. So it's the same kind of behavior we're trying to address, where the riders will have a fully charged battery in their two-wheeler or three-wheeler when they go home, and then they start their day and do their jobs. And then in the evening, when they're going home, they can also charge again. So you want to locate those swap stations next to the residential areas of these youth that actually ride the two-wheelers.
got it, got it. Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned that it's, one way that, you're keeping your operations so tight, especially as you're scaling, right? I also saw, that you, congratulations, secured a strategic investment as well from a from a from certain from certain companies as well, right? To further scale your infrastructure, right? As your network continues to grow and your data pipeline continues to grow as well and these operations, right? Where do you think, software and data become the most important part, or, play an important role in your business? For example, predicting the battery demand, balancing batteries between stations, monitoring uptime or whatnot. Could you give us a little bit of insight into that?
Data has always been one of the most important. Data and analytics has always been one of the most important in this business. When you're doing a network, when you're building a network, you need to have those data and analytics to ensure that you can take business decisions, sound business decisions. And so for us, it's very key. And that's why we have put up what we call a network operations center that runs 24/7, and we collect all this data. We collect data on attendees and employees. So for example, we do correlation between your late coming and the swaps you've done. We do data on how many swaps have been done. We do data on employees. We know which riders. Sorry, we do data on riders. We know when they have swapped, which batteries they have swapped, where they've swapped. We also have cameras fitted on all our stations that we can monitor remotely in the network operations center. So data is very key and integral to our business, because you're running, let's say, a network of 7,000 stations. You're not going to manually, do this. It has to be with technology, and technology can only be enhanced with data and software and analytics. So it's really, really important and in the heart of our business, to the heart of our business.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. Really at the heart of business to understand the data to make sound business decisions. I just love that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just time flies, we're having fun. So I just have a few, last questions, so that's what happens when having fun. So I see on your website also that uh, you know, just your 50 active slot stations, which is really amazing, right? How do you, as your network continues to grow as well, I'm just curious, how do you plan to um, you know, ensure your customers or riders know where your stations are, at any point in time, right? How are you going to get the word out there for all these various locations of your riders?
So we are doing quite a lot of things. Again, it has to be with technology and
Mm.
data. I don't know when we started. I remember, I don't know which year you were, John, not trying to find out your age, but I remember. I remember we used to hold the analog phones. Remember those phones? Right now, as I speak, everybody holds a smartphone, right? So everybody has changed from that analog phone to a smartphone. And with smartphone, there's a lot of functionality that comes with it. So you can do your Google Maps, you can do your, it can be your payment tool, or you can load your payment platform on it. So things have become easier. And I now remember, for example, mobile money. I don't know if you have mobile money in Singapore or in these developed countries. Everybody didn't believe in virtual money. Right now everybody is in mobile money. I can barely move without cash. So what is happening with EVs is that we're going to reach a level where we cannot hold cash, or we're not holding cash. That's one. And it's all going to be technology based. So these riders have an app where they can easily tell the next swap station. All you need to do is, from your location, log on to the app. The app says, okay, the next station is in 2 minutes from where you are. It even gives you direction, just like Google Maps does. And then also tells you, we have so many batteries that are fully charged at this station. So you don't now need to go and check physically if there is a charged battery. You already know from where you are that there's already a charged battery at station X. So that's the kind of technology we are bringing in and enhancing, so that it's easy, for you to get your swap and go.
Wow. So is Yongeza Capital gonna be building such an app, or you're looking to build such an app?
We already have. We
Wow.
already have. So
Oh,
we're
wow.
moving.
Wow. Wonderful.
I think for me, I always tell my colleagues at work that what we have, I think, is 0% of what we need. We just need to continue improving it.
Wow.
So
Wow.
every day is a day of learning. Every day is a day of improvements. We just need to build and build more.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Once again, time really flies. We're having fun. I'm just down to my last two questions. The
Yeah.
my last couple questions is, as you're building something as ambitious as a EV infrastructure, which we all know all infrastructure has a ton of logistics, a ton of stuff that just goes into it, right? I think it'll be really valuable for our audience to really learn, right? What is your number one business constraint now you're trying to fix to take you to the next level? Like what is something that keeps you up awake at night?
Without hesitation, John, capital. This is a very capital intensive business.
Absolutely.
For 3 years now, I don't remember having earned a salary as a founder or a CEO.
Wow.
Everything that we earn, we plug back into the network. Why? Because we want to build this network.
Right.
Yeah. We want to build a network that is operating, that is efficient, that is optimized for players out of the developed countries to come and just plug and play. That's our intention. And 50 stations is a drop in the sea. I'll just paint you a picture. In Uganda, just alone, we have about, for two-wheeler market, we just have about 2 million bikes.
Wow.
But of those, only 20 are EV bikes, two-wheeler bikes.
Right.
So that is about just under 2%.
Right.
So where's the 98%? The 98% can only be enhanced if we put up infrastructure.
Right.
Yeah. Nobody's going to buy an EV if they don't have the convenient infrastructure to charge their EV.
Yeah.
This is what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to do. And every station that comes has capital requirements. And that's the intensity at which we are seated on. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I mean, not the fact that capital constraints are tough. I love your thinking around it. It's really, really awesome.
Yeah.
Last question. We know that what I found just continuing to operate and work in Africa, I see so many young folks who are ambitious, who are driven to build the future of Africa, such as even yourself, right? If you had one piece of advice for another aspiring entrepreneur who's looking to try and make their mark in the future of mobility and potentially even EVs in Africa, what would one piece of advice you would give to them be?
I think what is happening in Africa compared to Europe, the US, Asia, is that most of the times we do not prove the concept. Yeah. We run this, but we do not prove the concept. And many times we lack the capital to prove the concept. And they're very brilliant minds in Africa, very extremely brilliant minds in Africa. But they do not have the capital to do this. There's so many things that as young people in Africa can do, and they are trying to do, but they do not have the uplift using the capital that they require. Yeah, and that's one of the biggest challenges. So what's happening is that venture capitalists, DFIs, all these guys come, but they want 3-year audited accounts. They want ABC. They have a criteria for giving you capital. But I mean, I'm developing a concept. I am young. I am innovative. I'm developing a concept in agriculture, in energy, in transportation. How do you expect me to have a 3-year audited account? How do you expect me to have a governance board? I think the capital should fit what we're trying to do, or to develop Africa, and this is where the mismatch is. For people who are developing all sorts of innovations and businesses in Africa, I think should be given a chance to prove that this is a workable business venture or business line.
Wow. That's wonderful. Well, that's time for us, unfortunately, really time flies, we're having fun.